So I bring you my story by way of an African folktale. You see, in a small village in Africa, there was a mother and a father, and they had 3 wonderful sons. And as it was in that village, that each time the son was approaching manhood, he would go into the forest with all of the men. They would have a ceremony, dancing, feasting, and at the end, the son was to stand in the circle of men and proclaim his profession for the community. Now, of course, everyone wanted someone who would make money, give things, or make sure the community ate. And so the first son, after he participated in this wonderful ceremony, he announced, "I will be a farmer like my father." And his father stood proud because he knew then that the village would continue to have the yams and the cassava and the grains. And all the old men clapped their hands and they wished him well. The next year, the second son, he also had the wonderful feast of dancing and food. And it was his turn to stand in the circle of men and announce what he would do. And so he said, he would be a blacksmith like his uncles. And he would provide tools and jewelry and items to sell at the market. And of course, the old men clapped and rejoiced because he would bring money to the village. And the following year, it was the third son who had a chance to go into the forest and have the ceremony, the feasting and the dancing. And when he stood in the circle of old men, he announced he wanted to be a storyteller. Can you imagine what happened as the old men thought, storytelling? Well, son, reconsider this. What about eating? You can't eat stories. Well, what about money? You can't spin stories. Come on now, son. Don't embarrass me. You have to choose a profession. Think of your father, your uncle, and all of your ancestors before you. Why would you want to become a storyteller? Well, he tried to explain that as he heard people talking about their experiences, and as he listened to the birds and watched the animals, he knew that there was something in that exchange. And he wanted to make sure that that something was preserved. Now, though they thought that was a good excuse, they still said, no, son, that's not a profession for anyone in this village. You have to be a man. And a man either brings home the bacon or he allows his wife to be at a place where she could fry it. He said no. He had the courage to follow his passion. And he said, I will be a storyteller. So it was then that the circle of men said, you know, the first son, your brother, brought us honor. And the second son brought us glory. And you bring shame. So they cast him out to go away from the village. And he left. And he turned around and he said, one day you will know the power of the stories. And he walked out into the forest. And the village went on with the annual rites of passage ceremony. And as boys came, they followed tradition. They either chose a profession to be a farmer or a blacksmith. And they forgot about the young man who went out to be the storyteller. But as he traveled, he came across an old man. And this old man was sitting under the baobab tree, and he was singing. And he was singing songs from long ago. And as the boy listened, he learned a lot about the history of that very village. Nothing he had known before. And as the old man continued to share with him, he learned about his own father's father's father, who had once been a chief. And he did not know. And he also learned about all of the experiences of villages, not only from that particular continent, but all over the world. And he began to learn those stories. And for years, they shared stories. As they walked along, they shared stories, and he remembered each and every one. And soon, the ancestors called the old man, and as the boy put him into ground, he said to him, I will continue to share the stories. And as it came to pass, the young man in his travels stopped at this village that was preparing for war. And when he came, he said to the chief, I have a way that I can help you become victorious in this battle. And the chief said, you're not in armor. I don't see any weapons. What can you do? He said, bring the man from the other village to you, and let's sit down and share stories. Stories? We are about to go to battle. There's a stake here. He said, bring the man who is the chief and have him sit and share stories. Reluctantly, he asked for the man to come. And of course, he brought all his warriors just in case. But they sat and they began to share stories. And they found that they had more in common than they did differences. And so that year, there was no war. The chief was so elated that this young man was able to bring peace without fighting, that he actually made him an important member of the community. And he gave him fine clothing to wear, and the best of the old houses, and plenty of wives and money. And he became the official storyteller. And his job was to settle disputes, was to give the history, and was to keep the culture. And people heard about him all over the land. And soon people came to visit the storyteller. Well, during one visit, he looked out to the crowd and he saw familiar faces. He saw his mother and his father and his two older brothers. And they sat and they listened and they learned so much about their own village. And they learned about how wars were stopped because people shared their experiences. And they were so impressed with this young man that after he was finished speaking, the father came to him and said, you know, I have a story to tell. Listening to you, I remember my son, who's probably long gone by now, but I had a son who wanted to do just what you're doing. And the young man listened as the older man told the story. And then he said to his father, it is I, your son, who understood the power of story. And the father couldn't believe it. Here he had cast the son out because he wanted to be a storyteller. And because his son had the courage to follow his dream, he's now standing before him, the most important person in the community. And he asked for his son's forgiveness. So his son said, Father, the way that you can show me your respect is to go back to the village and let them know the importance of sharing stories. So the father went back to the village. He gathered everyone around and he told them the story of how he, his younger son, because he had the courage to follow his dream. And so it is said that today in Logos, the small village, you will hear the people say that yams will fill your belly and money will fill your pocket. But it is the story that inspires